Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into an incredibly ambitious strategic framework designed by Jasmine Elisa Beltrand. It's called the SELA Mandate for Cognitive Justice. Now, if you're wondering what exactly cognitive justice means, well, you are in the perfect place. We're going to unpack how this mandate aims to turn Southeast Los Angeles, or SELA, into a national model for neurological protection. We're talking about a massive shift, taking an entire community from reactive to proactive safety by literally tying air quality monitoring directly to brain health.
Okay, let's dive into this by asking a pretty wild fundamental question. Can the air you breathe actually change the physical structure of your brain? Because, when we think about air pollution, we almost exclusively think about our lungs, right? Asthma, respiratory issues, coughing on a smoggy day, the usual suspects. But there is a hidden, invisible mystery here that scientists and advocates are frantically trying to bring to light. The shocking truth is that invisible air pollution isn't just making it hard to breathe, it is actively causing physical changes to our minds. To understand how this all works, here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start by unpacking the invisible brain crisis and its localized impact in Ground Zero, Southeast LA. Then, we'll explore the roadmap to mitigation, how to actually legislate cognitive justice, and finally, how communities can navigate a just transition.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the invisible brain crisis. We're uncovering the link between air quality and the brain.
Like we just mentioned, we're so used to associating air pollution with respiratory health. But the truly terrifying threat, the one flying totally under the radar, is neurological. To wrap our heads around the mechanics of this crisis, we have to look at two major culprits. First up is TRAP, or traffic-related air pollution. And second, we have PM 2.5. PM just stands for particulate matter, and the 2.5 means these particles are 2.5 microns or less in width. To put that into perspective, that is a tiny fraction of the width of a single human hair. No way, right? Well, here is the really scary part. These microscopic particles act like tiny chemical carriers. When you inhale them, they don't just hang out in your lungs. They are so unbelievably small that they cross right into your bloodstream, carrying toxic chemicals directly through the body and eventually straight into your brain.
So what exactly happens when those chemical carriers bombard the brain over a span of years or even decades? Well, the data is incredibly sobering. Research shows that long-term exposure to this traffic-related air pollution is a potential determinant for Alzheimer's disease and other severe cognitive impairments. We are talking about chemicals causing adverse health effects that literally alter the brain's physical structure over time. This isn't just an afternoon of brain fog. This is long-term cognitive decline triggered directly by the environment a person lives in. It's absolutely crucial to understand.
That brings us right to Section 2, Ground Zero, Southeast LA, and the localized impact of this invisible threat.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the staggering contrast it shows. We know the invisible threat exists, but pollution doesn't impact everywhere equally, right? Look at SELA. On one side, the region is just blanketed by high-impact pollution sources. We're talking heavy trucks, the sprawling I-710 freeway, the Alameda Corridor, rail yards, warehouses, and legacy toxic sites like the Cooper Drum Company. But historically, when protecting quote-unquote sensitive receptors, we basically just thought of schools. This mandate pushes back and expands that definition to include senior facilities and dense residential clusters that sit directly alongside these industrial zones. You literally have this massive industrial burden sharing a fence line with highly vulnerable populations.
Moving on to Section 3, the roadmap to mitigation. This is all about moving from reactive to proactive community safety.
The real brilliance of Jasmine Elisa Beltrand's framework is that it doesn't just point out the problem. It provides a highly strategic, localized roadmap to actively mitigate these massive neurological risks. A huge piece of that puzzle? A serious technology upgrade. In the past, traditional air monitoring was super slow, spread way too thin, and entirely reactive. The SELA mandate says, let's replace that outdated monitoring with AI-driven e-nose networks. Now, I know electronic noses sounds a bit sci-fi, but they are very real. They get placed directly in your schools and homes to detect industrial emissions in real time. It marks a vital shift. You go from waiting to see how bad the air was yesterday to proactively knowing exactly what is in the air right now so you can take immediate action.
Building on that tech, the roadmap lays out 3 super actionable steps. Step 1 is using those AI e-noses for driven compliance, making sure industrial players are actually held accountable in real time. Step 2 is incredibly tangible, setting up pilot programs for indoor air filtration systems right in those high-traffic residential corridors.
Because, look, if we can't clean the outside air overnight, we absolutely must filter the air inside people's homes right now. And step 3 is community-led solutions, ensuring the folks actually breathing the air are the ones driving the changes.
All right, Section 4, Legislating Cognitive Justice, Using Data-Driven Policy for Neurological Protection.
Knowing this science and having a cool roadmap is fantastic, sure, but it's really only half the battle if you don't have evidence-based regulation to back it up. At the very heart of this legislation is a groundbreaking definition of cognitive justice. So the crucial point is that this mandate defines it as a public health policy that addresses community disadvantage as a modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline. Let that sink in for a second. Being in a disadvantaged community is a risk factor for cognitive decline, yes, but it is modifiable. It can be changed. By using hard scientific data to pinpoint exactly which traffic pollution components are messing with the brain, legislators can finally target the exact specific emissions causing the harm.
To actually make cognitive justice a reality, the policy goals have to be incredibly specific. First up, we need scientific regulation based heavily on hard emissions data. No more guessing. Second, it requires deep regional collaboration, utilizing groups like the CELA Collaborative and community steering committees. And third, it's about leaning into existing legislative frameworks like the Assembly Bill 617 Community Air Protection Program to really give some teeth to these community initiatives. It's basically about weaving a strong legal and structural web of protection.
And that leads us perfectly to our final topic, Section 5, A Just Transition. This is all about empowering frontline residents.
You know, all the flashy technology and tough legislation in the world doesn't mean much if it's just forced onto a community from the outside. The true power of the CELA mandate is seeing the community itself step up into leadership roles. And this brilliantly illustrates a core philosophical shift, moving away from an extractive economy and toward a regenerative one. For decades, CELA has been treated like an extractive zone, a place where industry comes in, takes land, pollutes the air, extracts wealth, and just leaves behind toxic sites and cognitive decline. The Just Transition framework fundamentally flips that script. It aims to build a regenerative economy where things like health, clean air, and community well-being become the primary measures of success. Now, why does this massive undertaking matter so much? Just look at this number, 5. The mandate has one very specific, incredible impact goal, delaying the onset of cognitive disease by even just 5 years. Think about the sheer magnitude of that for a second. If proactive air filtration and AI monitoring can delay Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment in this community by just 5 years, it saves the healthcare system billions of dollars. But honestly, far more importantly, it gives families 5 more years of quality life, 5 more years of sharp memories, and genuine connection with their loved ones.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the ultimate goal. The CELA mandate for cognitive justice isn't just about plugging in some air filters. It is entirely about empowering residents to be the primary architects of their own community's environmental and cognitive future. When the community actually takes ownership of the process, the resulting policy solutions aren't just effective, they become resilient, equitable, and permanent.
I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on long after this explainer wraps up. We've learned today that environmental disadvantage doesn't have to be some permanent life sentence. It is absolutely a modifiable risk factor. So if community disadvantage can indeed be changed, what will you build? What will you advocate for? Or what will you support to protect your own community's cognitive future? The science is super clear, the roadmap is right there in front of us, and the next steps, well, they're up to us. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this deep dive into the CELA mandate. Keep learning, and as always, stay curious.